Hello, America, and to our friends around the world, greetings and welcome back. We're back with the third reading of the brief about the Buddha. Sorry about that, I got distracted. About the Boodschappen doen op de markt. So let's pick up where we were at last time. Dan gaat hij naar de viskram. De vis ligt op ijs en bakt een. Het ijs houdt de vis. Frank kiest een grote vis uit. Dat kost €2. Zegt de visboer. Frank geeft hem een biljet van €5. Om te betalen, de visboer geeft hem €3 terug. De verkoper verpakt in papier. Frank stopt de vis in die kleine tas. All right, so we read that under the part 2 of this brief of Boodschappen. Now we're going to go into part 3. But before we get there, again, I want to emphasize, remember, in Dutch, V, as we've found, especially with the numbers, is very similar as the letter F. So if it is €5, €5, it's €5. And of course, papier, it's pretty much a given. Papier. And then Frank geeft hem. So however you interpret that portion of the sentence is up to you. Frank gift him. Frank gave him. It still works out the same way. Now, granted, this is not 100%, word for word translation. This is intuiting based off of exposure. I don't know, remember the old joke about, laying your head on the science book or mathematics book and trying to study via osmosis? This is essentially that whole concept. It's exposure. You're being exposed to it. And if I had the skill and the ability, I would just incorporate wrapping, using wrapping paper for fish at the fish market. Don't tell anybody I gave it away. Still, let me know in the comments what you think of that portion. We're going to go into part 3 and read through it. And I will come back with questions for you to answer on all 3 portions. So do your best to follow the instructions in the description box as far as how to translate it, how to understand it, how to comprehend it, how to become natural with this language. Okay, this is the third portion of the lesson with brief. And it goes again, I want to emphasize to focus on words we've already covered. For example, het, we've covered that. Ein, we've covered that. The other thing to keep in mind is dissimilarities. What words look similar to what you already know in English? Apart would be one word. And remember, just because they use apart or samen in Dutch doesn't mean we don't use a different word, but for a similar reason and a similar meaning. I know it makes it seem complicated, but it will make sense because what's another word for apart? Another word for apart is separate. The next point I want to emphasize, as I've been covering repeatedly, is in Dutch, words, especially number words that begin with a V, have an F pronunciation. For example, vier or vijf. And their, you know, twisted pronunciations of, four, vier, four, and vijf, vijf. So keep those things in mind. And then as you begin to become more and more familiar, ni, new way, we've already come across that as just a more difficult way of saying new. Heft, we've covered heft in the past, you know, as being similar to have or having or needing or wanting. So keep these basics in mind. And het is an article in terms of the or it, as well as ein is both a number and an article. Der vis halt he apart van de andere Boodschappen. Der vis halt he apart van de andere Boodschappen. Wer derop verkoopt en markt koopman schoenen. Wer derop verkoopt en markt koopman schoenen. Schoenen. Wer derop verkoopt en markt koopman schoenen. Frank heeft nieuwe schoenen nodig, maar ze zijn te duur. Frank heeft nieuwe schoenen nodig, maar ze zijn te duur. Hij moet nog brood kopen bij de markt van een bakker. Hij moet nog brood kopen bij de markt van een bakker. Frank koopt een brood en een pannenkoek. Frank koopt een brood en een pannenkoek. Dan is het koud op en gaat Frank weer naar huis. Dan is het koud op en gaat Frank weer naar huis. Onderweg naar huis eet hij alvast een paar koekjes op. Onderweg naar huis eet hij alvast een paar koekjes op. Onderweg naar huis eet hij alvast een paar koekjes op. All right. I tried to read through each of the sentences a couple times to make certain that the pronunciation was there. And before I leave this video, I just want to emphasize we've done the word onderweg, 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 underway. If I remember correctly, this was covered in the storybook that I wrote and had animated and uploaded as a fun way, an introductory way, an elementary way of learning Dutch, where on the way, the fox and the rabbit were on their way to another place. Keep in mind, Dutch is extraordinarily similar to English. There's I don't know for certain how it works, but England gets its name from the Germanic Angles that left that portion of the Germanic regions over 1,000 years ago. The Saxons, the Angles, the Jutes that crossed over to Britannia and took over. And they ruled long enough that the Angles became, renamed the island Angle Land. And the Dutch territory, the Netherlands, sits in between the British Islands and Germany. When you look at a map, these things are pretty much, hop, skip, and a hop away, hop, skip type of, however, it's late, apologize. They're not quite in line with each other, but they're geographically reasonably considered in line with each other. If you're going to go to the British Isles from Germany, it would make sense to bypass or to go through the Netherlands. And so the similarities are there. Don't overthink it, but do recognize it when it sounds like it or looks like it. There's probably a strong chance it is like it. All right, that concludes this brief about Frank having gone to the market. Let me know in the comments what you think of it, and I will be back with questions in another video.